Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where today's most exciting solopreneurs share their startup stories. They also deliver tangible strategies that they would implement personally if starting their business over today. Each episode is a startup masterclass. Make sure you take notes. Take it away, Kevin.
This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups, and my guest today is Jacques Lepron. Jacques, thank you for joining us on Rising Tide.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
It's just it's a pleasure. It brings back, hearing the French accent kind of brings back so many good memories of times we spent in France when I butchered your language for 3 years. But please forgive me. Don't hold that against me tonight. But thanks again, and just tell our listeners a little bit about Jacques.
Well, so I'm obviously living in beautiful Sydney in Australia. It's a great weather today. And I've been living in Sydney for something like 14 years now. Obviously born in France, in south of France. I'm an engineer, mechanical engineer by trade. Moved to Australia, as I say, 14 years ago to finish my studies in Sydney. And then I found a job pretty much straight away after my master degree, and then decided to stay pretty much. And this is a typical Australian way where you get sponsored, you get a visa, and 5 years pass, and then you become permanent resident, and then 10 years later you become a citizen, and you've got your life in Australia. So that's me in a nutshell. I've been always living in Sydney, in Australia, which is for me one of the best cities of the world. You've got the lifestyle, the beach, the water. I do a lot of kite surfing and swimming, ocean swimming. But that's where you have the city, where you have the social environment, the connection, the jobs. So Australia has been as well, economy-wise, has been on a great success story for the last,
sure.
I think, 25 years. It's coming to an end now. But as an engineer, it's been always easy to find a job and go from there. So very, very lucky to be here today, definitely.
And I actually have, it's interesting because this is like the Lepron family week, because I'm actually interviewing his wife in 2 days, so about her startup. But tell us a little bit about the family.
Yeah, so met Carl. So as you said, Caroline, my wife, and I are running separately, but our startups. So we have as well a 2-year-old daughter, 2.5-year-old daughter. So it's a bit of a challenge to start a startup, to run a startup, an early stage startup, limited revenue, and you don't really pay yourself. And as well having to support your kids, just in terms of, how you organize your day between taking care of her, dropping her at daycare, picking up, taking care of her at night, as well as the financial cost to be able to support, daycare in Australia.
Yeah.
It's not as like in France anyway, where it's pretty cheaper. So there is a financial cost. So it involves, making some sacrifice about time you've got to spend on your startup, time you spend with your family, time you've got to work as well to make some money on the side, because especially when you're early, you've got to do that as well. So it's been an interesting year and a half. I used to work before in some of the for oil and gas company, and then Caroline came to me one day. She was already working on another startup called Cookie2, and say, we think we want to go to the US, and we want to go to San Francisco. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? And I had this good job, and then so I decided to pretty much to quit my job, which were paying, the big job, paying the money and paying the bill, where Caroline was working on this startup. And after 2 months, we left. And we got to spend 4 months in San Francisco for her to develop Cookie2 at the time, launch in US, which ended up not working. So we came back. But that was another thing of, living your dream life to move somewhere else, start a new project. And that's how, at the end of this trip, when we came back to Australia, I've decided not to go back to corporate and really start my own thing. I had a few ideas. And that's kind of how then I ended up moving on to Driverli.
So, I mean, obviously the common thread here is that when you get an idea, you move to 2 of the most expensive cities on the planet, and you try to start a startup, and you've got a child now. So you actually almost have 3 children. So you have 2 startup children and one 2.5-year-old that is living in your house with you. So walk us through so I mean, it's one thing to start a startup when they say this another spouse has, a pretty, a job that brings in some cash.
Mhm.
But if you are a house that is starting 2 startups at a time, that almost sounds like insanity to me.
It's
That's just
it is in
so
a way.
difficult.
It is in a way because you time poor, you money poor, so you really, but you learn about how you really become efficient, especially when you have a daughter. So she's doing a nap every day. Especially we work weekend as well, and on weekend we try to take turn, but we spend some time together, the 3 of us. But the example on Saturday and Sunday, she would sleep. She has a nap from 2 to 4, or 1 to 3, and we know we have 2 hours where we can work on something. And so you kind of saying, I've got 2 hours, I've got to do this, and I'm going to make it. And that's kind of how you become so much efficient about your time. The positive side of both of us running a startup is what I found, and when I've been listening to other people, where one of the partner is doing his or her startup, and the other partner is working and supporting the household pretty much. They tend sometimes not to understand how difficult it is, and it takes time. One of the my major learning for me is like you always underestimate how long it takes. And sometimes are you naive, or are you just trying to be optimistic? And don't just look at all the obstacles, because if you're looking at all the obstacles, you kind of like, well, I just give up because it's too hard.
Exactly.
But by having both of us working on it, we say in a way we can help each other, but mostly I would say support each other. Mentally. Your mental health is important as well, and sometimes it's hard, and you don't put some expectation on the other thing, where you've been working on your product for 1 year. I don't see any outcome yet. You're still very small, blah, blah, blah. And that kind of, I see that happening for others, for where we are pretty much at the same stage between our 2 startups. And
That's
this
a great
is,
point.
I think, so we're growing together, because to be honest, working in a corporate environment, and have a 9 to 5 job, you have a security, you have a salary coming at the end of the month, and then running something by yourself, and it's all about you. It's a lot of on you. It's 2 different things, and you're learning so much and you're growing so much out of this. You don't realize that when you look back and say, I've done that. Don't be too hard on you, and look at what you've done and you achieved. Even it's not Airbnb, but it's already something that you've done, and you have to be proud of it as well.
So have either of you raised capital at this point in time, or have you like bootstrapped both of these startups?
So Caravan just raised a pre-seed last month. She closed it last month, so just right during the COVID-19 crisis.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. I decided to pull out and to wait. But the difference is I went through a pre-accelerator from last year and until the end of 2019, and I've got 10K out of this, which was good, because it was a kind of a validation of the business model. Of the business idea so far, and the way we want to go to market. And obviously 10K is always nice. But so far we've been bootstrapping as much as we can. And mostly as well because I've been working 1 to 2 days on the side as a consultant, so I can, charge higher fees than if and that will help me
just like normal salary. So walk us through the idea. I mean, when you came back from San Francisco, were you thinking, I mean, on the plane back to Sydney, were you going, okay, what am I going to do when we land? Because I mean, at that time you knew that the startup in San Francisco was not going to fly, right? So you thought, we've got to do something on this side. What were some of the ideas that you thought about, and then what did you eventually land on?
So some of the ideas were actually before San Francisco. So when I was working for this oil and gas company, I took care of developing a new business in telematics. So what you would call, fleet management in a B2B space, where you help customers manage a fleet of trucks or buses, reduce cost of maintenance, accident safety by tracking the behavior of the driver. And that was a business that this company wanted to get into, because they're selling fuel, it's a commodity, and when you compete on big contracts, how do you offer additional value to your customer? And so what I realized during that time was if you provide some, relevant and good information back to the driver, they improve their driving behavior a lot, and as a result, they improve safety records, and there was less accident. So I've been always interesting about what can we do with this technology, with this concept in a B2C space, in the consumers. And in a consumer space, like you and me, who would be the target audience, who would be very helped by this? And I look at young drivers who just got a driver license, drive, they're probably overconfident, but they've got no one to really give them feedback. They had some feedback when they learn to drive, but once they're just by themselves on the roads, no one tells them how bad they are until they have an accident and probably realize that they have to change their behavior. So that's kind of where it started. And when I was in San Francisco, I spent a lot of time kind of, hustling around some of the mobility companies to understand, the state. Maybe I was looking for a job at the same time. And I got to realize that, we're not yet ready for AV. It's still a long time, despite, the buzzwords. The second thing is when I was looking at, any company doing the same type of telematics concept, improving driver safety, they were all focused on companies, B2B. No one was really offering something in the B2C space. And the main reason is because for a company, there was a huge cost associated with, driving behavior, accident, and risk. So you could monetize easily. And so this kind of, when I came back to Australia, I was like, well, there's something to do in that space. And I know it's going to be around the young drivers. So it kind of really pushed me and confirmed me around that space. But then when I keep thinking about that, the idea was like, well, before I can help a young driver, stay a good driver, I need to make sure he's a good driver first. So it's all about how I need to teach him the right skills for him to become a good driver. And then I use technology on top of it to maintain or improve that behavior. So that's where I end up going to thinking about, well, it all starts with education, and then education is about the driving schools industry, really, which is where today, you still learn to drive the way you learned to drive 30 years ago. You jump into a car, you've got some tests, and then at the end of that, you then get the driving test, and obviously you've been trained to succeed at the test. You haven't been trained to become a good driver. And that's how things are done.
That's it's an interesting.
How I want to,
Just I want to just jump in real quick. It's interesting that you looked at an industry that's been there for a long time, and I'm assuming that the way that driver's licenses and driver's testing is done would be similar to what was done in France or what was done in the UK, where you have to take driving lessons, you have to pass a test, and then you get your driver's license at 18 or 17 or whatever the age is. But so you looked at this space that's been there for a long time, and you thought, okay, it's not like you're starting something new. It's like you're improving on an existing technology, right?
Yeah. So it's not, I guess, exponential innovation. It's what I would say more incremental innovation, looking at an industry, a current industry. How can we make things better? And as well, idea I was thinking was on my mind. I want to start here because ultimately I want to get into offering a solution for the young driver to stay safe on the road while driving. So, but I feel like I've got to start from where it starts. And it starts at learning to drive. So before going into the telematics with some insurance product or some financial incentive, could be an insurance or anything, I was like, I need to make sure that those people know how to drive, because that's what it would help me qualify them for a potential financial incentive program beyond that.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of a big funnel, pretty much. You want to address most of the drivers, you qualify the best. That they learn to drive with your instructors, which have been qualified. You access some data about how they learn to drive, and then you can qualify them for those financial incentive programs, such as insurance.
So how do you know who the best driver is? So walk us through kind of the business idea of Driverli. Maybe give us the elevator pitch about what it does and who is an ideal client.
Yeah, so I think one thing to add is, I can start with that. But so really today, Driverli, it's only the first part of the idea I explained to you. Driverli, it's a marketplace. where we connect new drivers, whether they are local young drivers or as well international drivers, because there was as well some challenge on that segment, with experienced and recognized driving instructors who are giving them the right skills to become a safe driver. One of the challenges is not every instructor is equal in terms of how they teach and how good they are teaching. And the driving schools industry is an industry where some people, and I don't want to disqualify the industry, but a few of them tend to see that as a job to, make money on the side. You need a car, you need a license, and then you can teach anyone. Now, not everyone is a good teacher, and you can obviously ask, any teacher in any industries, you've got some skills, you got to get some skills to be able to teach and share knowledge in a way that is constructive for the kids to really take on board.
Yep.
And so the idea was there is so many instructors available in Australia, not all of them are equal. Let's find a good one and let's make sure they connect them with people who need one. So it's a marketplace. While this was my main focus at the moment before I really tackled the other problem, but initially was like, I need to make sure that my kids get the best education possible. So how do we do that?
And that brings, and that's kind of early stage revenue too, right?
Yes, it does. Yeah. And interestingly is I started to have an initial focus on young drivers. So, the local kid wants to learn to drive, but quickly from my feedback from the market was there is another market that needs help. It's international drivers. So you'll be surprised that in Australia, we obviously we have a high migration. So a lot of people coming from different countries. There were different rules in each state about how you can convert a license.
Yep.
It's a very complex industry as well, what I do. And then if you come from the US or from France, you just have to show your driver license from France or US, and then you get a new license. That's it, no question asked. If you come from a country like India or China or Asia in general or South America, you've got to redo the test. And those people, a lot of those people have some issues. They don't speak English.
Mm-hmm.
They don't speak English well enough to be able to get some driving lessons in a car with someone who's going to give them direction to learn to drive, on the left side of the road, with understand the road rules in Australia, which is sometimes quite different. And so when I put together Driverli and I launched Driverli, I had a few instructors speaking languages other than English. And then I got people asking me, "Hi, I'm from Spain. I'm from Argentina, or from Brazil, or from Colombia. Can you help me find an instructor speaking Spanish or Portuguese? Because right now, I need to take a few hours of lesson to prepare for the test, and I don't really speak English very well, and so I'll be more comfortable to be in a comfortable environment in a car to be with someone speaking the same language." And so this became my main, I guess, audience that's really using Driverli at the moment, because I've got now kind of a strong network of instructors speaking other than English languages across Sydney and Melbourne.
I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as you're kind of laying out the framework of kind of what phase 2 looks like or phase 3 looks like or whatever, I'm thinking so many different applications, but one that really comes to mind would be insurance. How do you kind of integrate this with helping people save money on their car insurance, or is this part of a large insurance company? Would you license this to them, so they could, help people be better drivers or something like that? Have you thought about that down the road?
Yeah, definitely. That's probably one of my main. I guess it was probably one of the main applications I could see out of the Driverli marketplace. Is about insurance and helping people access insurance, helping people access cheaper insurance based on the driving behavior. So the idea there is there is already enough existing technology around the world that already do that kind of tracking behavior from your phone or from added hardware in your car through the OBS port, where you can track the behavior, and then you can link that with an insurance program. And I'll start to talk to some insurance provider in Sydney about potential application. That could be which is on the roadmap pretty much, but not for now.
I mean, one thing that yours does that maybe the tracking devices don't is they really don't know who's driving the car, though. I mean, it could be anybody driving the car with the phone or with the tracking chip in the car or whatever. So, but with yours, you're actually training the individual to be a
Yes.
better driver, to be more safe. I mean, I could see even a government application that if I was the Australian government, I would love for somebody to, to invest in teaching kids how to drive better as young kids,
I agree. I agree. Yeah, yeah. And so I guess some of the technology now are I was working in insurance space around the tracking system. Some of them now can see whether it's dad or the kids driving the car, because you can, you learn from the pattern of how they drive, and you
Okay.
can identify that to a way.
Yeah.
So you would know, and that's really interesting if you use a phone, because let's say you pay your insurance as you go, and you're using your phone to declare, I'm starting to drive now, and it's on and it's tracking, but actually it's probably your father, driving. He would recognize that it's the father driving. Now the thing is, because you pay your insurance as you go, you're not going to track someone else anyway, so other than
Right.
you. So
Right.
the risk is, kind of the question I receive all the time is like, what happens if someone drive and doesn't switch on the system? Which I don't have the final answer, but for me, would be kind of similar to driving with no insurance. So meaning, if you have no comprehensive insurance, so
Yeah.
meaning, you would have an accident and you would not be covered for that.
Or, I mean, is there any way that once the car starts, it automatically, the application automatically starts or something like that? That it's something maybe you can't turn off. Maybe it's tied directly to the vehicle or something like that. But so I'm curious, as you've been thinking about this and you're kind of looking toward the future, what are some other applications that you think that this, without giving away all your trade secrets, but what are some other ideas that you think are kind of part of this family of services?
Well, one other thing as well, so really, if you think about Driverli, it's building a data platform, and the data you collect is about driving behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is, how can I making this data portable? So as a driver, you can port your own data from insurance to insurance or across other industries, other verticals. And that data is it's powerful enough to predict, how good you are as a person, how good you are, you're going to be at paying your mortgage, how risky you are as a person. And then you could think about, you could go from there and go to maybe using this data to qualify someone for a mortgage based, or just a car loan based on how risky he is on the road. So you may don't want to offer a mortgage to someone is going to crash his car. He's going to crash the car. He has a chance of crashing the car compared to. What was interesting anyway was starting with the young drivers, because he was the most exposed segment of drivers that is exposed with high risk, but as well high cost. So a car insurance for a typical comprehensive car insurance in Australia for a driver like me, 36-year-old, would cost me $700 to $800 AUD. For the young driver, if he wants insurance by himself for the first year, you would have to spend $4,000.
Wow.
And that's how much, because you're in that category of high risk, and insurance are not very, I would say, I would not say not very smart, but they're taking some data points that are, how old are you, what kind of car you are, where are you living, where the car is parked, to give you a pricing. There is not dynamic data
exactly
that can be used in terms of the pricing, which now we can start to see. You're looking at some of the US startups looking at, you have a price per kilometer, because we know there is a strong correlation between the more you drive, statistically, the more chance you have to have an accident. So if you drive less, you should pay less.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, is how you can use the data to offer additional services or understand risk from the driver to offer him other deals.
I mean, I could see, even if you're tracking the activity of the vehicle, maybe even has like shopping application. What are your preferences? What do you travel preferences, and all kinds of things that, if data is kind of the output at the end of this, and the just the whole idea behind it's funny you mentioned insurance, because I used to work in the insurance industry, a long time ago, and it is very much a class system. Like, they pick entire classes of people to determine the rates, without the kind of this, it has very little individual bias, in it. And what you're talking about is getting more toward really tracking the individual and pricing it to the individual versus just, because of the demographics, you're this age, you're this gender, you're this, you drive this many miles a year, and that's about it. Have you had an accident or not? Have you had tickets or not? That type of thing. So it's really interesting that just the applications were moving forward. And I looked at your website and just, kind of saw some of the services you provide, and it's a sharp website, by the way, but just the whole idea of, I want to kind of drill down a little bit, just the time we're in, just this whole kind of global pandemic, this COVID-19 that we're all facing right now. So tell me, first of all, how has that impacted your business? And then I want you to just kind of speak to our listeners as an early stage founder, and just give them, if they're in similar positions, give them a couple of hints that are really hopeful, that you think, okay, here's two foundational steps that I think really would help you as a founder to kind of navigate this difficult time. So first of all, how's it affecting your business? And then maybe some ideas on how you can navigate that. So
I guess, in terms of revenue, it's been a sharp decline because pretty much people are not taking any more lessons. In Victoria, they've closed, and I think in New South Wales as well, they closed any testing, so you can't take any tests. So I've seen a sharp decline in traffic and just number of requests for driving lessons since pretty much March. Since especially Australia, spent a lot of time, putting in place some, social distancing, so we're not in a full lockdown like some countries in Europe, like France or Italy, which is great because the economy is still in a way running partially, but still running. But a lot of instructors are not taking any lessons because they want to make sure they don't get infected in a car. I guess you could be trying to provide masks or clean the car, but there is still limited risk, similar to Caroline on the photo shooting. But anyway, now I think around the situation, you've got two choices really how you take the situation. It's it's the end of the world. I'm losing everything. Nothing is working, and then I don't know where to go. Or it's a massive opportunity to do something different, or take some time to do something you didn't have time before. So what I found for Driverli and for myself was I spent a lot of time, onboarding instructors, looking at them because I had demand, and I was kind of, building my network of instructors as I go. And I never had the time to, spend some time on the back end of the product, of the website, working more on my, marketing automation. And so now I've got the time to read that. So that's my first thing, is looking at the glass, half full, and saying, okay, I can't do that anymore. And I've got to be aware that, it may take 3 or 4 months. Do I have the cash flow to survive? I guess the good thing is when you're early stage startup, you can't rely on a startup to provide you a cash flow to give.
Yeah, for sure.
If you do, well, that's not the right decision. Unless, you starting to, probably a few would do, but that's a different situation. But I guess in 99% of the time, you can't rely on a startup to provide you a cash flow. So that means you could almost put your startup aside if you want to do something else during the time, or you take the opportunity to build and work on things that you haven't had time to do.
Yeah.
And so it's, learning about, well, I'm going to put my head away from, I'm losing revenue, I'm not making any revenue, but I got all these things that I need to really keep pushing. And maybe think about your competitors that probably, which are bigger than you. They have people to pay, so they're really struggling to do that. Well, it's for you a great opportunity to spend the time on doing things that can, make a difference. And that's kind
great.
of the things really you look at, and I've been doing. So for the last 2 months, as I have a few interns supporting me, we'll be working on how we go to market, how we find our customers, what sort of things they need, how we do the change, how do we nurture our leads through the platform, etc., etc. Things that sometimes you don't have the time to spend, especially when you're early stage startups and you're just by yourself or a very limited team.
Right. So, I mean, you're in the household with another startup founder. Do you see that some of the times your applications like overlap, some of the ideas overlap, some of the marketing ideas, some of the back office kind of operational things? You're going, hey, we're doing this over here. You need to try this, or is it sometimes friendly competitive?
It is, yeah. It was a bit friendly competitive, not mostly around, who will be the first one to raise, and who would have the first customer, and how much you made last month, and what's traffic on the website.
Exactly.
But you always find, it's good about you B2C and B2B. I'm heavily relying on AdWords or Google keywords because everyone's looking for driving schools. Where
exactly, yeah.
Caroline with Scouty on the photo shooting, it's kind of a new industry which is building. So there is not much. The demand is not really. It's like Airbnb. 10 years ago, no one was looking for rent house in Sydney for 2 weeks on holidays. You go to the hotel, so you don't really look for. So it's a different approach. So we've been gently competitive around some of this, but as well, it's good just to be able to share ideas or challenges about what you think about that, because that the other person in front of you already have some experience, understand sometimes some of the struggles. So not just just do this and I will be done. No, it doesn't work out like that.
And at the end of the day, I mean, you have to live with her, so you want it to succeed. So
that's right,
because it's to your benefit for it to succeed as well. But I love that, and it's interesting. You said, that was B2B. That you're doing B2C. The people that are losing are always the one making excuses. So that's exactly right. So, well, Jacques, I just really appreciate you taking the time today. It's been great to kind of hear your backstory and just hear, kind of the progression of Driverli and next, see where it may be headed in the future. Is there anything that we just haven't touched on you want to wrap up with real quick, and then we'll just tell people where to find you online?
So you can find me online for different way, driverli.com.au, which is a website. You can find me online on LinkedIn as well. You just have my name, Jacques Lepron, online, and you would find me and connect with me, or just connect me at Driverli.com.au, which is my main email, and that's the best way to find me online. And I've got nothing else to add. It was a really great discussion. Really love it. I appreciate as well your offer to have me on board, to have me through this podcast, and hopefully what I've shared will be helpful for some other people.
Well, I appreciate that. It's really funny. I mean, I connected with Jacques and Caroline, his wife, separately. I didn't even know they were related. So we booked them on the podcast, and I actually asked her last week. I said, I've got two guys that name the same thing next week. Are you in relation to that? And she started laughing. She said, actually, he's my husband. So, I mean, it's just an interesting, a very small world, that there's just 7 billion people. I mean, it's amazing that we connected these two, but it's kind of like the Lepron family week we've got going on the podcast this week. So we're anxious to hear from Caroline in a couple of days. But Jacques, just thank you for just taking the time and let you go and enjoy the rest of the beautiful day there in Sydney. But just thank you for playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Thanks a lot, Jacques.
Thanks, Kevin. Bye.
Another episode in the books. We hope you heard some great takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on iTunes and YouTube. As always, thanks for listening to Rising Tide.